The calm before the storm. It was a time of peace on Earth. The world had come together, leaving behind old wars and divisions. People lived their lives, unaware of the great threats that lurked beyond their planet. Science had advanced, and humanity's reach had extended far into the stars. But even as Earth flourished, the skies above remained silent. For centuries, there had been no signs of life beyond our world. No messages, no signals, no ships. It was as if the universe was vast and empty. But that silence was about to be broken. In the middle of the night, without warning, Earth's deep space satellites detected something strange. A faint signal, almost impossible to notice, flickered across the systems designed to monitor the farthest reaches of space. At first, it seemed like just another glitch, a tiny bit of static in the vast expanse of the universe. But the signal repeated itself, like a voice calling out from the unknown. It was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The signal was clearly not from Earth. A small group of scientists, working at the Global Communications Center in a secluded mountain facility, were the first to notice the signal. They were used to tracking space debris, listening for comets, and collecting data on distant planets. But this was something different. They ran their instruments over and over again, trying to make sense of it. The signal wasn't just noise. It was a message, encoded and clear. Excitement quickly turned to fear. The first decoding attempts were incomprehensible, just a jumble of numbers and symbols. But as they worked, a pattern began to emerge. The message was coming from a distant star system, beyond the reach of even the most powerful human telescopes. It was coming from a place where no human had ever traveled. The signal seemed to be a warning about something that was headed toward Earth. As the days passed, the message began to become clearer. There was a common phrase that repeated over and over in the decoded text. The Empire emerges. The scientists were stunned. This was no ordinary signal. It was a clear message from another civilization, one that seemed to have power beyond anything humanity could imagine. A message from an empire, one that was on the move. But where were they coming from, and what did the phrase mean? Word of the signal quickly spread across the world. Governments and military leaders scrambled to understand what they were facing. The message was unmistakable. The Empire was coming. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. Global leaders were forced to take immediate action. They convened meetings, called experts, and began preparing for the worst. The problem was, no one knew what the worst was. What did this empire want? And why were they sending a message instead of simply arriving? Was it a sign of peace, or was something darker brewing? At the same time, other nations began receiving the same signal. The world's great powers started to unite in the face of the unknown. There was no longer time for rivalry or competition. The message was clear. Humanity needed to come together for the survival of the planet. But as the weeks passed, the message from the stars grew stronger. The Empire was getting closer. A new, unexplained force was heading toward Earth, and humanity had no idea how to fight it. The technology they had was advanced, but they had never faced anything like this. No weapon, no defense system. Nothing could prepare them for the unknown. In the streets, people went about their daily lives, unaware of the impending danger. But in the halls of government, military leaders were preparing for the worst. Plans were made, troops were positioned, and scientists worked day and night, trying to learn more about the empire that was approaching. As Earth's best minds worked tirelessly, one thing became clear. Humanity had no idea how to face the force that was coming. The signals continued to grow stronger, a constant reminder that the empire was coming. The calm before the storm was beginning to fade, and the world had no choice but to brace for what was coming next. The question on everyone's mind was, could humanity fight back against an empire they knew nothing about? Could they survive the invasion of a force unlike any other they had ever encountered? The days of peace were over. The storm was coming, and no one knew how to stop it. The unexpected enemy. As the days turned into weeks, The message from the stars only grew more urgent. Every attempt to decode the signal revealed more details, yet its true meaning remained elusive. The phrase, "the Empire emerges," was repeated over and over, but the specifics of the message seemed cryptic, designed to unsettle and confuse. The more humanity tried to understand it, the more it seemed like a threat. Then, on a quiet evening, just as the world was beginning to accept the reality that something was coming, the first sign of the enemy appeared. A massive, unidentified object entered Earth's orbit. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a colossal ship, silent and menacing. Its shape was not of any known design, with smooth, almost organic curves, and it emitted a low hum that vibrated through the atmosphere. The object was far beyond the reach of any human technology. It was clear that the ship had come from beyond the stars. The world's military and space agencies scrambled to understand what they were seeing. The object had been detected far too late to prevent its arrival. Governments tried to reach out diplomatically, sending out signals and messages of peace, but the object remained unresponsive. No communication came from it. No response to human attempts to establish contact. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the object began to move. It wasn't alone. More ships, hundreds of them, began to emerge from the shadows of deep space. They were massive and powerful, each one resembling the first in its silent, looming presence. The invaders didn't announce their arrival with force. They simply appeared, like shadows creeping across the sky. The world held its breath. On Earth, military forces prepared for action. But it was clear, humanity had no idea what they were facing. The ships were too advanced, too powerful. Every attempt to engage them failed. Earth's weapons were insignificant against the strength of the fleet. They fired upon the invaders, but the energy beams simply bounced off, as if the ships were invulnerable. Every missile that was launched against them was shot down before it could get anywhere near its target. The message from the stars began to make more sense now. This was no peaceful arrival. The alien fleet was here with one purpose: to conquer. The invaders were a technologically superior race, their ships capable of unimaginable speeds and unimaginable power. Humanity, with all its advances, was nothing compared to them. The aliens didn't need to make threats. They simply demonstrated their might by disabling Earth's defenses in a matter of moments. In the skies above, humanity's greatest cities began to panic. Sirens wailed as entire populations fled underground shelters, trying to hide from the inevitable destruction that seemed certain to come. Nations fell into chaos, their leaders struggling to maintain control as the invaders made their presence known more and more every day. But the worst part wasn't just the enemy's power. It was the fact that they seemed to know everything about Earth. The invaders knew humanity's weaknesses. They knew the locations of key military bases and civilian centers. How did they know this? The answer became apparent when a strange broadcast appeared on every screen in the world. The message from the invaders was clear. It was not spoken in any known language, but its meaning was unmistakable. It showed the vast fleet descending upon Earth, with the face of a towering alien overlord in the foreground. His face was cold, emotionless, as he addressed the humans. His words were simple, translated into all human languages at once. "Your world is ours. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed." And just like that, the unimaginable had become real. The invaders were here, and they were not interested in negotiation. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of leaders and warriors who had no idea how to fight such an overwhelming force. As humanity reeled in shock, the aliens continued their march. What had once seemed like a distant, theoretical threat now felt all too real. The people of Earth were faced with an enemy they didn't understand, and one that seemed unstoppable. It was clear, humanity had been caught off guard. The invaders were more advanced, more powerful, and more prepared than anyone had ever imagined. The question now wasn't if Earth could fight back. It was whether there was even a chance of survival. But deep within humanity's heart, one thought lingered. We cannot give up. We must fight. The time for panic was over. The time to take action had arrived. A last hope. With the alien fleet hovering ominously above Earth, humanity was forced to confront a terrifying reality. They were outmatched in every way. The advanced technology of the invaders had crippled Earth's defenses in a matter of hours. Cities that had once been symbols of human achievement were now on the brink of destruction. The alien ships were impervious to Earth's weapons, and the invaders themselves showed no interest in negotiating or discussing peace. Global leaders from every corner of the world met in secret. Military leaders, scientists, and engineers gathered in underground bunkers, strategizing in a desperate attempt to formulate a plan. Time was running out, and the alien fleet was just days away from making its first strike. The world had to unite. There was no room for petty political squabbles, no time to hesitate. All of humanity had to work together if they had any hope of survival. In a hidden lab deep beneath the mountains, a group of scientists worked tirelessly, trying to find a way to fight back. They had studied the alien ships, analyzed their energy shields, and examined every piece of data they could gather. But nothing seemed to work. Every theory they tested, every weapon they designed, had failed. The alien fleet remained unharmed, an unstoppable force. But there was one possibility, one last hope, that had been suggested by a brilliant scientist, Dr. Elena Morin. She had been working on a theory for years, an experimental faster-than-light, FTL, travel system. It was a risky, untested technology, something that had only been theorized in science fiction. If it worked, it could allow humanity's ships to travel beyond the reach of the aliens and attack their fleet before it reached Earth. But if it failed, the results could be catastrophic. The human ships could be sent to the farthest corners of the galaxy or disappear entirely. The risks were enormous, but Dr. Morin believed it was humanity's only chance. The decision was made. Earth's best ships would undergo a radical transformation to carry out the FTL jump. If they succeeded, they would arrive in the heart of the alien fleet, catching them off guard. They would have only one chance to strike. If they failed, the fleet would arrive on Earth, and it would be too late for any counterattack. As the FTL ships were prepared, humanity's desperation grew. The public had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. The world was being told to remain calm, but the air was thick with tension. People anxiously watched the skies, knowing that the enemy's invasion could begin at any moment. In the few remaining days before the fleet was ready to jump, humanity's military forces began to prepare for an all-out assault. Earth's defenses, though outmatched by the alien ships, were still the last line of defense. Cities were being evacuated, shelters were being stocked, and soldiers readied themselves for a battle they weren't sure they could win. For the first time, humans were united. All differences and borders were set aside. The human race was faced with a common enemy, and it was clear this was a fight for survival. The world's best minds worked together in ways they never had before, creating makeshift weapons and defenses, pooling every resource humanity had. The struggle was no longer about money, power, or politics. It was about saving the planet. Meanwhile, Dr. Morin and her team continued their work on the FTL jump. The process was stressful, requiring precision and coordination. Every detail was crucial. With each passing hour, the pressure mounted. Humanity's fate rested on the success of this experimental technology. If it worked, it would be the first time humans could travel faster than the speed of light, giving them a fighting chance. But if the jump failed, the consequences could be disastrous. As the final tests were completed, Dr. Morin stood before the FTL ship, watching as the countdown began. The engines hummed, and the entire crew prepared for the jump. There was no turning back now. The eyes of the world were on the mission. Every person on Earth knew that this was their last hope. And so, as the alien fleet loomed closer, humanity's last line of defense was ready. It was time to make a choice: stay and face certain destruction, or take the risk and fight back with everything they had. Dr. Morin's voice echoed through the communication system as the final moments of preparation ticked away. We either make this jump or we lose everything. This is our only shot. With a deep breath, the order was given. The FTL engines powered up, and the ships blasted off into the unknown, leaving Earth behind. The bold decision. As the FTL ships blasted off into the unknown, the eyes of the world were fixed on the sky. The entire planet held its breath. Time was running out, and humanity's future rested on the success of the daring jump. The alien fleet was on its way, its approach now undeniable. In just a few short days, Earth would face its greatest challenge yet, unless humanity's desperate gamble paid off. The FTL jump was something never before attempted. There was no blueprint for success, and even the most optimistic minds understood that failure could mean disaster. If the technology malfunctioned, the ships could end up lost in the vastness of space, or worse, disintegrate under the immense forces generated during the jump. But the risk of doing nothing was far greater. As the last of the ships disappeared into the fold of space, the atmosphere on Earth was filled with a mixture of hope and dread. Those left behind could only wait. Military leaders, scientists, and civilians alike watched their screens, trying to make sense of every update and every small piece of information they received. They couldn't know for sure whether the ships had made the jump safely or were now lost to the stars. Back in the FTL ships, the crew was locked in their tense final moments. The engineers, with beads of sweat on their brows, monitored every system in real time. Dr. Elena Morin and her team were at the helm, focusing on their instruments, pushing every ounce of their knowledge to keep the ship intact. The countdown to the jump had begun. There was no turning back now. As the final moments ticked away, Dr. Morin gave a quiet nod to her crew, signaling they were ready. The engines hummed, vibrating the whole ship as if anticipating the leap through space and time. With a sharp inhale, she gave the command. The ship's engines roared to life, and the vast expanse of space stretched ahead. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ship shot forward. The stars outside the viewports stretched into streaks of light as they tore through the fabric of space at unimaginable speeds. For those aboard, the feeling was like nothing they had ever experienced, an overwhelming force that pushed them into their seats. It was a ride that lasted only seconds, but felt like an eternity. The crew couldn't help but wonder if they were truly in control, or if the ship had simply been carried away by the unknown forces of the universe. And then, as quickly as it had started, the jump ended. The ships lurched to a sudden halt. The stars outside the viewports blinked back into view, but they were not the stars of Earth's skies. They had arrived at their destination, at the heart of the alien fleet. A moment of stunned silence filled the ship. The crew realized that they had succeeded. They had made the jump. But as they looked out at the alien armada surrounding them, it was clear. Their success was only the beginning of an even greater challenge. The ships of the alien fleet were enormous, far larger than anything humanity had ever built. They filled the space around the human vessels, blocking out entire constellations. These were not just enemy ships. They were part of an empire, a force that had conquered countless worlds, a power that had no equal in human history. But as humanity's ships drifted silently in the alien armada, something unexpected happened. The alien ships began to move. Slowly at first, but then faster, almost as if they were aware of the humans' arrival. The first ship, an imposing vessel with angular, metallic features, sent out a massive signal that swept across the communication channels. The human fleet had made it, but the invaders knew they were there, and they didn't seem pleased. "Prepare for battle," came the order through the comm system, and the crew braced themselves. They had arrived not in a moment of triumph, but at the edge of a war. Dr. Morin knew that their mission wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity could fight back. The fleet wasn't just here to strike. They were here to make a statement. They had arrived. They had broken the silence of the universe, and now it was time to show the invaders that humanity was more than just a defenseless planet. "Fire everything we have," Dr. Morin ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The first shots were fired, and humanity's battle for survival began. The battle begins. As the first shots erupted from the human fleet, the vastness of space seemed to shudder. The alien ships, colossal and menacing, had been caught off guard by the sudden arrival of the humans, but they quickly regrouped. The hum of their engines could be heard across the communication systems as they adjusted their positions, forming an impenetrable wall of metallic behemoths. The battle had begun. Dr. Elena Morin stood at the command center of her ship, eyes focused on the screens as the alien ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The beams hit the human ships with intense force, but they had designed their ships with the best defense possible, using the latest human technology. The shields held, but just barely. It was a matter of time before they began to break down. "Hold steady," Dr. Morin shouted to her crew. She knew they couldn't afford to waste time. Every second was a gift, and their only chance was to catch the aliens off balance before they could adapt. She watched as the first few enemy ships retaliated, their weapons cutting through the void with deadly precision. The human fleet's advanced shielding and weaponry were holding for now, but every hit from the alien energy weapons sent a jolt through the ships. "Target their main engines," Dr. Morin ordered. "We need to disable their ability to move or escape." The human ships, relying on quick maneuvers and advanced targeting systems, focused their fire on the alien fleet's engines, hoping to slow them down. It wasn't enough. The aliens, with their unyielding power, adapted faster than the humans had expected. Their ships were built for battle, and they seemed to have no weaknesses. Each blast from the human ships was met with an impenetrable shield or a swift counterattack. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity fought back fiercely. They may have been the underdogs, but they refused to back down. The human fleet darted across the starry expanse, dodging and weaving as the alien ships closed in. Missiles flew, plasma beams collided, and explosions lit up the dark sky. The atmosphere was tense as every human ship struggled to avoid destruction, pushing their technology and their crews to the limit. On one of the human ships, a young pilot, Lieutenant John Kessler, gripped the controls, his heart racing. His vessel was a small, agile fighter, and he was tasked with taking down an enemy scout ship that had broken away from the main fleet. It was faster than anything he had ever encountered, but he was trained for this moment. His mission was clear: destroy it, or risk it gathering intelligence that could lead to the destruction of the fleet. As the alien scout ship veered to the left, Kessler pushed the throttle to maximum speed, following it with precision. He pulled his ship into a dive, a maneuver he had practiced countless times, hoping to catch the scout ship off guard. He locked onto the target and fired. A stream of energy bolts shot from his ship, hitting the alien scout ship's outer armor. The blasts ripped through the ship's shields and struck the hull, causing a violent explosion. For a brief moment, Kessler's heart soared, but the victory was short-lived. Before he could even celebrate, another alien ship, larger and more powerful, appeared, flanking him from behind. It was too late. Kessler's ship was hit by a direct blast, and the whole vessel was rocked violently. Warning lights flashed. The ship's systems started failing. Kessler's hand scrambled over the controls, trying to regain control. But the ship was already spiraling. In that moment of chaos, Kessler made the hardest decision of his life. He activated the emergency ejection system, and his seat shot into the cold expanse of space. He watched helplessly as his ship exploded in a fiery burst, and the alien vessel that had destroyed it quickly moved on to the next target. But his sacrifice wasn't in vain. His brief encounter with the scout ship had distracted the aliens long enough for the rest of the fleet to regroup and shift the tides of the battle. The humans were buying themselves precious minutes, but the price of those moments was steep. On another front, Dr. Morin and her ship continued their assault, coordinating with the other human vessels. They had learned something in these first moments of battle. They couldn't match the aliens in sheer firepower, but they had speed, innovation, and adaptability. The human fleet didn't just fight. It fought smart. They dodged, they outmaneuvered, and they struck when it counted. But the alien forces were relentless. More ships arrived, their numbers swelling as reinforcements came through. The human fleet was being overwhelmed, its ships picked off one by one. Dr. Morin watched the reports come in, seeing her comrades fall, their ships disabled or destroyed. She had lost contact with some of the vessels in her fleet, and she knew the situation was dire. Despite this, she refused to surrender. Earth had fought for survival countless times before. This was no different. The enemy had underestimated humanity's resolve, and she would show them that it was their greatest weapon. All ships, focus fire on the alien flagship, Dr. Morin ordered, her voice unwavering. We have one shot. If we can take that ship down, we might have a chance to turn the tide. The final push had begun. The human fleet, battered but not broken, gathered all their strength for one last desperate assault. It was time to make the impossible possible. The final stand. The battle had raged on for hours, and the human fleet was starting to show signs of wear. Many ships were destroyed, their debris scattered across the stars like broken fragments of a dream. The alien armada, vast and seemingly invincible, had pushed forward with terrifying efficiency. Yet despite all the losses, the humans refused to surrender. Every ship that fell became a rallying cry for the ones still fighting. Humanity's last hope was now pinned on one final desperate maneuver. Dr. Elena Morin stood at the command center of the flagship, watching the chaos unfold before her. The alien flagship, a towering behemoth of metal and energy, loomed large in her viewports. Its shields were nearly impenetrable, but she knew they had no choice but to strike now. There was no time left for hesitation. All ships target the alien flagship. All firepower, full concentration. Dr. Morin ordered, her voice steady despite the overwhelming pressure. The remaining human vessels, battered but not broken, maneuvered into formation, all of them locking on to the massive alien ship. It was their one shot. The alien flagship was the heart of the enemy's command. Destroying it could cripple the entire fleet and give Earth a fighting chance. But it would take everything they had. With a final push, every human ship fired its remaining energy weapons at once. Streams of plasma beams and missiles shot toward the alien flagship, a concentrated assault of humanity's best technology. The alien fleet retaliated with a barrage of its own, but the human ships moved with incredible agility, using every trick and maneuver they had learned in the heat of battle. They dove, dodged, and swerved through the oncoming fire, outmaneuvering the alien ships at every turn. Then, something unexpected happened. The alien flagship, seemingly invincible up until this point, began to shake. First, it was a slight tremor, but then the whole ship seemed to stagger. A massive explosion erupted from within, rippling outward like a shockwave. The alien fleet was thrown into disarray, their lines breaking apart as their leadership faltered. The humans' concentrated fire had done it. The flagship was vulnerable. Hit it again. Keep firing. Dr. Morin shouted as the flagship's shields flickered, struggling to keep up with the constant barrage. Another powerful wave of missiles and plasma fire hit the already damaged flagship. This time, there was no resistance. The flagship erupted in a massive explosion, lighting up the stars like a supernova. The shockwave of the explosion tore through the surrounding alien ships, damaging or destroying many of them. The alien forces were reeling, disoriented by the loss of their command ship. But even as the alien fleet began to falter, the battle was far from over. The remaining alien ships regrouped, their commanders scrambling to maintain control. They began to launch retaliatory strikes, but the human fleet had already gained the upper hand. The alien forces, now leaderless and scattered, were no match for the human will to survive. The remaining alien ships hesitated, their attacks becoming less coordinated, more desperate. It was clear that the tide of the battle had shifted. The humans, despite their smaller numbers and inferior technology, had proven something the aliens had never expected: that humanity would never give up, no matter the cost. In the chaos of the battle, Dr. Morin took a deep breath, watching the alien ships slowly retreat. The human fleet had done the impossible. Against all odds, they had turned the tide. The invaders, once so certain of victory, were now forced to retreat. As the alien fleet began to scatter, Dr. Morin gave the order to cease fire. The remaining human ships, battered and broken but triumphant, pulled back, leaving behind the wreckage of their enemies. The battle was over. The Earth had been saved. The news spread across the planet in moments. Humanity had won. Against all odds, the alien invasion had been repelled, and the planet had survived. Cities that had once been on the verge of destruction began to rebuild. The people of Earth, once divided by borders and differences, now stood united in a way they never had before. They had faced the unknown, and they had overcome it. In the aftermath, Dr. Morin stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the stars. The battle had been won, but she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven something to the universe that day. They could fight. They could survive. And as they looked to the future, they knew they had a new place in the galaxy, one earned through courage, unity, and sheer willpower. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity fought back.